Hi there, if you want to learn how to create sound effects, then you are in the right place. Recently, I had a viewer contact me and ask me which Tonsturm Whoosh plugin or Doppler plugin I would recommend for them to get. And for those of you who might not know, Tonsturm is a company that creates really cool Whoosh plugins that a lot of professional sound designers use and have used for a long time, just because their stuff is really good and yeah, just really flexible and powerful. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the 4 Whoosh plugins that the company has, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about the pros, cons, and a bit about the key features of each plugin, and then give you my recommendations, what I would do if I was going to buy one of these plugins. All right, so here we are inside of Reaper, and let's start with the first one here that I have loaded, and this is Whoosh. And this is a really popular plugin that a lot of sound designers use and have used for a very long time since it came out, just because it was so powerful and easy to use, and it's really great. So this is the plugin right here, and basically you have your engine, and you can load your own sound sources, up to 4 sound sources, and it's a granular engine as well. So like you can turn on grains, you have different modes here. You can do clouds, loop. You can change the length of the window size here, and it also will search through the sounds here. Right, so you can change. I'm going to turn off the impacts just for now, just so we can focus on the whoosh portion. Right, you can change the pitch of your sound source. You can change how fast it's going to play through a thing here. So if I go like this, all right, maybe you just want this little section here. Right, but you can do that for each sound source. You can also load your own sound sources. So if I go here, I can go to user 1, and then I can click here, and then I have a bank of 12 sounds that I could load into here, right? So this is kind of Whoosh. This is kind of how it works. You can also create really cool impacts here if you put your symmetry down all the way to the left here at the top under the Doppler. Symmetry down to the left. I'm going to reset my shape here. Right, you can have these really cool, really easy way to create cool impact sounds, which is another thing that made this plugin really popular, right? So those are kind of the pros and the features of this plugin. The pros obviously are that it has a granular engine. You have your built-in effects up here. So you have, a delay, a tremolo, you have an EQ and a drive, a compressor. So it's all built in. So you don't have to add your own stuff, but you can if you want. And it's really good at making impact sounds. If you wanted to, it also has an impact engine here where you can also load impact sounds and then layer that with your whoosh. And then you can duck it if you want to in the mixer section here. Right, so you can have your whooshes, your impacts, and everything kind of playing together and line it up kind of where you want it. So it's really powerful for that. Now, there are a few cons to this, obviously. The one thing is that you would need the reactor ensemble, and I'm pretty sure you need the full version of this. So you have to buy the full version, which I think is discontinued by now, and I think it costs like $100+ if I'm not mistaken. So it's not the cheapest thing, and even after you get reactor, you still have to buy Whoosh on top of that, right? So it makes it kind of a more of an expensive investment if you're going to go down this route. The other thing that I don't like, and a lot of people don't like about it, is that loading your samples here, you're quite limited. Like you can only load 12 at a time, and it's really annoying because there's no way to load sounds in here. You basically have to drag and drop sounds in here, and like I said, you can only load 12 at a time, and then I have to do that for each one. So each sound source, I have to go here, choose my bank that I want, user 1. If I want user 2, then I have to load 12 more. If I want user 4 here, I have to load 12 more. Right, so you can see how this gets time consuming, just clicking on everything and trying to load stuff rather than just having on a track and then putting this for stuff to run through. Okay, now with that said though, there is a workaround for that I'll link in the description below if you do have Whoosh and you've never heard of this. But all right, so here I have 4 tracks. I loaded 4 different sound items on here. Let's reduce this a little bit so it's not too loud. And then what I can do here is actually insert or route these tracks into Whoosh here as an insert effect. Right, so now I lose access to all of the granular engine and the impacts and everything, all the mixer, everything down here, but I still have access to the engine here and the built-in effects. So now if we play it here, right, so I can still change the speed here. Maybe I want an impact sound. Okay, so that's one way to do it. So that way, it's really easy to just swap out these sounds, and you still get access to Whoosh here. So like I said, there is a specific way to route this. So maybe I'll put, I did make a video about it, so I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in seeing that. But that is a workaround for this plugin, for the limitations of it. All right, with that said, let's go to the next plugin here. The next one that we have is Traveler. So this is Traveler, and like Whoosh here, you have your listener in the middle, and then you have your path of your whoosh here. So I'm just going to play it here. All right, so that's how it works. You have your sound source is the yellow here, and then you have your listener here, which is the red. So just like Whoosh here, you have your speed controls, you have your Doppler effect stuff here, you have your built-in effects in here. What you have that's a bit more flexible is that you have modulation here. So you have an LFO that you can create modulation for, and then you can assign this to different effects here. And it's easy to see where it lines up. So the red here is the listener. So if you want the peak to be where the listener is, you can do like that, right? So this is a common practice or a common way to add effects to your Whoosh if you wanted to. So it's really easy to use, I find personally. And yeah, this Traveler here can also do impacts really well. So if you just change the shift here, it's going to do a similar thing as it did inside of Whoosh. Right, so you can do that. Right, so it can create whooshes, you can create impacts, you can also create like different flying patterns or design patterns or whoosh patterns. So if I go something like this maybe. Right, and this is something that you couldn't do inside of Whoosh. So I do find Traveler a bit better for that. So some of the pros that we just talked about here, you have your built-in effects, it can create impacts. It's a lot easier to load files, right? Because you can just put them into your track in your DAW and have it as a live input. You can also load it as a loop or as a granular, right? So it's extra flexible because you can actually just drag and drop your files here as you would inside of Whoosh. But you can also just do live so that you can play whatever's inside your DAW. So that is extra flexible, which I really like. And then the last thing here is that, of course, you can create these complex paths, these complex kind of whooshes, right, that you couldn't do inside of Whoosh. The one thing that you can't do inside of Traveler that you can do inside of Whoosh here is that you can't control the beginning and the end of the whoosh. Like you can't control the tail. The only way you can do that is by pressing play here, and then it'll automatically follow the flight path, right? One of the things that makes Whoosh here a little bit different, so if I go back to the Whoosh here that we were originally talking about, so what I can do here, instead of it running through automatically, like that, go to sync MIDI, and I can click on manual here, and then what I can do is I can manually drag across here with my mouse. So I can control the length of the whoosh, I can control how long or short it is, how long the tail is, how long the beginning is, right? I can control all of that. Right, so that's one of the really powerful things about Whoosh, I forgot to mention, is that you can control that. If you go to change the sync here in MIDI and manual, you can control that. You can't do that inside of Traveler here. So that's kind of one of the limitations or the cons, if you will, of this plugin. Apart from that, though, I didn't really have any cons. I really like this plugin just because it's so much more, I find it personally more flexible and with a lot more options of creating impacts and whooshes and stuff like that. All right, let's go to our next one here. And our next plugin here is Doppler Pro. So I think Doppler Pro, they kind of completely did a new engine. And personally, I'm not a big fan of the UI here. And I'm not a big fan of of the way it looks. I don't find it as visually appealing. That's just my personal opinion though. And the other thing I don't really like is that not everything is on one screen. So right away, this was kind of like a turnoff for me when I got this plugin because I have to use the slider down here to like look through all of the extra options to change the Doppler or to change the whoosh the way I want it, which is like extra work if I have to like click on this every single time just to change the whoosh the way I want it to have. So ideally this would be like on two separate lines, or you could like minimize these or something like that so that everything stays on one page. That was something that was really nice on Whoosh and on Traveler, is that everything's on one page. You don't have to click around to different pages to get the effect that you want. Everything's there, but this one you do. So again, that was kind of a turnoff for me. But one of the things that is new in this plugin is that now you have floor reflection. So you can create a lot more realistic flybys and drive-by sounds. So if you don't know what floor reflections are, it's basically just the sound of the noise hitting the floor and then back into the listener's ear. As a car drives by, you get that extra sound bouncing off the floor, off the ground, and back into your ear. So that's what floor reflection is. So if you're looking for creating more realistic stuff, this will work pretty well. So let's have a listen to this here. So that's with floor reflections off. Let's turn it on here. Right, it kind of has that phaser effect-ish, sort of. So that's what this is doing. It can also do impacts here. So if I change the listening position here and I just put it right at the beginning. Right, you can do that. And of course you can change the beginning and the tail of the sound here with this. right? And you have all your regular features. One of the things that you don't have inside of here though is built-in effects. So you have your Doppler effect, the Doppler settings here, but you don't have stuff like EQ or distortion or tremolo or anything like that. So this one here, this Doppler Pro here, I find it's more suited for if you're looking for like a very realistic kind of sound. I think it's probably best for that. But yeah, I personally, I don't really like the workflow of it. I don't like that there's no modulation options. There's no built-in effects. And then the impacts, again, I don't find them as good because I don't have those modulations. I don't have those built-in effects where I can modulate the impact or like adding distortion, which is a technique that I like to use at the transient. I can't do that with this because it's not there. It's not built in. So I have to use external plugins, which is just adding to my workflow. So this specific plugin is kind of redundant to me because of the next plugin that we're going to talk about here, which is Spintracer. So this is Spintracer here. And this one, you'll notice it's a very similar UI and workflow as Doppler Pro. So again, I'm not a huge fan of it, but what it does is it still can do those realistic flybys because you still have your floor reflections here. It doesn't have any built-in effects like Doppler Pro, unfortunately, no modulation. But what it can do is a lot of really cool, creative sounds and textures because now we have 16 sound sources that you can use as orbs, and these orbs can all move differently based on the settings that you have here. So let me kind of show you how you can do that. So here, I'm just going to go 1 to 16 to assign the orbs for tracks 1 to 16. And I have this down here. If you want to see like a full video of how I did this or how I set this up, I'll link it above because I did make a video on Spintracer and how to set it up and all that stuff. So you can see like I have all my tracks here previously set up for that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to grab a little loop section here. I'm going to delete this. I don't want that. Okay. So I'm just going to grab a little section here, maybe like that, and I'm going to loop it. Now I'm going to open up Spintracer here, and let's just play a little bit with it and see what kind of stuff it can do here. All right, so that's just a little demo of what it can do. So let's talk a little bit about the pros. We already said that. One is that it can be, it's very creative in terms of like the types of textures you can do just because of the flexibility of the orbs, and that you can load 16 different tracks, different sounds, which I have here, 16 different tracks, which are loaded. Each track here is routed to one individual orb, right? So with that, you can create a lot of cool sounds. And I also find that it's just an upgraded version of Doppler Pro. So I think Doppler Pro is kind of redundant if you get Spintracer. With Spintracer, you kind of get all the features that you would have in Doppler Pro. Like if you wanted to, like you don't need to have all 16 orbs. You can just have basically one orb and suddenly you have, or 1 or 2 orbs here, and then suddenly you have basically the same engine as you would for Doppler Pro. Another thing that I find that it's good at, like Doppler Pro here, is that it's good at creating, realistic flybys and drive-bys. One of the things that it doesn't do, unfortunately, is that I haven't yet figured out how to create like really good impacts with it. I don't think it can really do that just yet. So that's a pretty big con for me, just because I find that impacts is something that I create a lot of, and if a plugin can do whooshes and impacts, then that's really good. But if it can't, then it's kind of a disappointment. I'd rather just go with Traveler rather than this for that instance. And another thing, like I mentioned before, I personally don't like the workflow. I don't like that I have to go down here to scroll around every time. I'd like to have everything just on one page if possible when I'm doing my stuff. All right. So with that said, what are my recommendations? What would I do if I was just starting out? So if I didn't have or didn't own any Doppler plugin, any Whoosh plugin, and I had nothing, The first one that I would probably look at is Traveler, right? So if you're just looking at like creating really good whooshes, really good impacts, Traveler can pretty much do it all, and it's flexible. It's really flexible. It's really easy to, well, I find it pretty easy to use. Everything's kind of on one page here. So you have everything that you kind of need. You have your built-in effects. You can create paths. You can do a live input. You can do loops. You can do a granular engine if you wanted to and load files into there. If you're doing live input, you can have multiple different tracks here, like inside of Reaper here. I can have multiple sound sources here on my tracks, and then I can create a lot more complex whooshes and impacts and stuff like that just by having all these different sounds here. So my go-to, if I had nothing, this would be it. I would just go for Traveler and do that. Now, if you're looking or you need stuff for like realistic flybys and realistic drive-bys, then I would look at Spintracer. I would probably skip over Doppler Pro and just go straight for Spintracer. Unless you're looking for something that's like kind of really simple and you want just a simple UI and something that's relatively simple to get started with, then maybe have a look at Doppler Pro. But honestly, if you're just looking to have more flexibility and creative ability, then just go for Spintracer, because you can still make it work with Spintracer and make creative flybys, like I said, because you already have the floor reflections here if you wanted it. You have a lot of flexibility in the flying path, because you can control the flight path here with your mouse, and you can control the orbs as well. So with all that flexibility, if you're looking for something for realistic, that's what I would go for. All right, so I hope you found that useful and valuable. Let me know if I missed anything. Is there a key feature that I missed for any of these plugins? And would you have a different recommendation than I just made? I'm really curious to know what you guys use and why you use it. So let me know in the comments below. It'll also help other people who maybe are looking at getting a Whoosh or Doppler plugin that don't have one. It would help them make a better decision as well. So yeah, let us know in the comments below. So I think that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. If you want to see another video where I actually created 1,000 Whoosh sound effects all in one video in 18 minutes, it actually took me 2 hours to make, but the video itself is 18 minutes. I'll have that on the screen here if you're interested in seeing that. And if not, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.